chair of Sub 3, Senator Mitchell, will have some questions in this area as well. But I think in some just general reactions to the overall budget, education, a big winner. Some of that required, of course, as a function of Prop 98. But if there's any shortcomings, it seems to be felt once again in the area of health and human services. And I know we'll be having full hearings on these in Sub 3, but with respect to developmental services, and there's several subcategories there, of course, but with the big push to close the big centers and go to community-based support for the developmentally disabled, there's been no increase in the rates received by providers since 2006, yet we've had increase in minimum wage and other just cost inflators. And in the district I represent, and I know I'm not alone, some of the providers who have provided care for very high need residents in the homes, they're closing the homes because they just can no longer run a business. And while there have been studies initiated, I think, by Health and Human Services Agency, they're studying while these homes are closing. And for the families who are dependent, it's not like there's an open market of competition of providers. To the contrary, the need is growing and the provider base is shrinking. So I'm just curious from both the administration and the LAO, and again, I'm picking on a particular area, but it's one that I know in my district we've received a lot of concern, and it's not a new concern. It seems every budget cycle, this community is frozen at 2006 rate levels, and we do have something called the Lanterman Act that is supposed to be a civil rights act and protection for the developmentally disabled, and that's often the community. They have some wonderful advocates, but they're often outnumbered and outflanked by interest groups with much larger advocacy budgets. So if we here in this committee are not advocates for this community, they will continue to be underfunded and at the end of the line. So I show my interest here, but I'm just curious, any reassurances that you can offer as to whether the proposed increases, what are they based upon? Is it based on this growth in the community, and does it contemplate any increase in provider rate reimbursement?
Teresa Keller with Department of Finance. The growth in the Department of Developmental Services budget is largely attributable to caseload and utilization increases. There's no provider rate increase built in except for adjustments related to minimum wage and sick leave. The HHS agency, as you noted, is working on a developmental services task force, and one of the work groups that they have already initiated is focused on rates and rate structures, and they'll also be looking at regional center operations as they move forward. So those are efforts in that area.
Thank you. LAO, any?
Sean Martin with the Legislative Analyst's Office. Just one additional observation is that when we were reducing regional center budgets over the past 5-6 years due to the recession, one of the responsibilities that we relieved some of the providers that was providing us with information about their costs. So since they did not report that information for several years, there's a lack of data for us to turn around and look at what their costs are, how they might have increased, and evaluate from that perspective whether rate increases are justified.
Right. Well, I appreciate that, and again, we'll drill down more in our Sub 3, but I think this is a shared concern of the legislature, if I may be so bold. I don't think this is a partisan issue. There's not a Senate district or Assembly district in this state that doesn't have tax-paying families who have the challenge of developmentally disabled family members. So it's going to be a priority for me, and I think for many other members. And I just think any studies, we should have the ambition of collecting whatever data is available between now and the May revise, so that we can have some informed data to generate a counter proposal to the administration, or hopefully that the administration would include in its May revise, because again, I think the status quo is not only potentially a violation of protected legal rights, there's a human rights issue here as well. So I appreciate any help from the administration and the LAO's office in putting a microscope on this. So thank you.
Thank you, Senator Monning. And I very much appreciate your bringing up the issue. I had it on my list of follow-up questions. I hear often from our regional center, and these are folks doing the Lord's work, and they're doing it on less than a shoestring budget at this point. Their costs, of course, have gone up since 2006. You say there are caseload adjustments, but that is correct.
That is correct. Caseload and utilization, both.
Nonetheless, the challenge of operating on a shoestring budget is only exacerbated as the size of the population they're dealing with, even for adjustments for caseload. But we know rates of autism are going up. And then there's also the phenomenon of younger beneficiaries of the services provided by regional centers who are now adults, and create additional and greater challenges for us. So I would agree with you. We have to get some information so that we can make informed choices based on data. But I think I'd